Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, September 7th. Happy Labor Day, and I'm Blair Kirkhoff. Game week for the Super Bowl champion Chiefs has arrived. On Thursday, they'll take on the Houston Texans, a team they split with last season, with both games at Arrowhead. Both games involved big comebacks. Back in October, the Texans won 31-24 after trailing 17-3. A big moment in that game was a Houston strip sack and fumble by Patrick Mahomes that led to a short field touchdown just before halftime. The Chiefs avenged that outcome in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs, amazingly overcoming a 24-0 first half deficit to win going away 51-31. Thursday's game matches the two highest paid players in the NFL with contracts by Mahomes and Texans quarterback DeShaun Watson signed in the offseason. They were both selected in the 2017 draft, and don't be surprised if we see these two match up often in big games in the future. Because it's the traditional NFL opener on Thursday, the teams have had only a few days to work with their 53-man roster. On today's show, we'll hear from Chiefs General Manager Brett Veach as he explains some of the difficult decisions required to get his roster to 53, which happened on Saturday. But first, we'll catch up with Mahomes, who met with the media on Sunday, a few days before he'll begin his fourth NFL season and third as a starter. So here we go with Patrick Mahomes.
Obviously, I assume you saw DeShaun and his extension. Do you get the sense that you guys will be battling, not just in these sorts of games, but in really big games postseason for the next several years with the way you guys are set up on your franchises?
For sure. I think you saw that with the last year and the year before that. You see DeShaun, and the Texans are a great football team. They have a lot of great talent around him, and he makes a lot of big plays in big games. And so I think I said something to him last year at the end of the game, and that we're going to have these battles for a long time. And we're two opponents in the same division, same conference of the AFC, so I'm sure I'll play a lot of games against them.
Let's go to Blair Kirkhoff. Go ahead, Blair.
Hey, Patrick, if I'm not mistaken, your first game in a Chiefs uniform was at one of these Thursday night kickoff games, and you got to see the Chiefs offense sort of in its full effect. I'm just wondering what your impressions were that night, and is this the type of game that a player like Clyde Edwards-Helaire might be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, I think every single game you go in with the mentality, especially with our offense, that someone can really go out there and have a big game. And Clyde's definitely one of those guys. He's someone that seems like he always plays good. At least in college, he always played good. And whenever the big games came, he played better. And so we're going to go out there with a mentality that we're playing against a really good football team, a really good defense. We're going to try to find a way to win a football game.
Let's go to Nate Taylor. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Patrick. Welcome to Game Week. You've known DeShaun for years now, particularly at quarterback camps and obviously watching each other in college. Just how exciting is it for you to know that the league sort of put this matchup in front of the American people as the first game this season, knowing the two of you guys, like you said, are going to be competing against one another for perhaps a decade or so?
Yeah, it's very exciting. Be the first game of the year. All this anticipation, but at the same time, it's just we're playing a football game, and I think it's all the hard work that me and DeShaun, and knowing how he works, have put in to be in this situation, to go out there with our teammates and try to win a football game. And so I'm just excited for the opportunity to go out there on a nationally televised game and get to play at Arrowhead Stadium.
Go to Michelle Steele. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hey, Patrick. Happy Sunday. I just wanted to ask about the Run It Back tour. How do your emotions compare week one this year compared to last year ahead of the season, now that you've been to the mountaintop and you've got that Super Bowl ring?
I'm just as excited. I promise you that. Every time I get to go to the football field, go to Arrowhead Stadium or whatever field we're playing at, and get to suit up and play for the Kansas City Chiefs, I have ultimate excitement no matter if it's preseason or if it's in the Super Bowl. So I promise you I'll have that mentality going into this first game.
Let's go to Sarin Petra. Go ahead, Sarin.
Patrick, Coach Madison said last week that if the players, and there's reports out there that the players are going to have a demonstration league-wide before the games. Coach Madison said that everybody would be in unison. And when I pressed him about the coaching staff, he said the coaching staff as well, whatever you guys decide to do. Number one, do you know what you're going to do? And is everybody, do you feel that the organization, from the top down, from Clark on down, is a part of whatever it is you, the players, are going to do?
Yeah, I think we have a great organization that way. Where I've had talks with Clark, with Mark, Donovan, Coach Reed, and all these coaches and guys, and we've had a lot of discussions. And I'm sure there'll be something fully planned. We haven't exactly got the exact details on that yet, but we'll do something like you said in unison, something together to show our support for everybody out there that's going out there and doesn't have the platform that we have.
Let's go to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Pat, as one of the leaders on the team, just wanted to get your sense. Are guys done looking back? I mean, between banner raisings and ring ceremonies and all that, I mean, do you feel like guys are focused where they need to be right now?
I think so. I mean, we're in game week now. Everybody's ready to go. You can feel the intensity. You can feel that mentality. I think everybody's at the point now we're just ready to play football again. I mean, we had that great year last year, but that's last year. We're a brand-new football team. The Texans are a brand-new football team. We're going to go out there and get to compete against one of the best in the first week.
Let's go to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Pat, oddly enough, with no preseason game, the last time we saw you in a game setting was the Super Bowl. So just through training camp and through the offseason and whatnot, where do you feel like maybe you've been able to improve and will be able to display on Thursday night?
I think you're just going to see me being able to make adjustments quickly. I mean, going into a game like this, obviously we played Texans at the end of last year, but they have a whole offseason to prepare, especially for us being that first game. So you don't know what to expect all the way. I mean, you have to try to expect the unexpected. And that's what we're going to try to do and have game plans for everything. And I'm going to try to make those adjustments as quickly as possible so we can get off to a fast start, hopefully.
Let's go to Vahe. Go ahead, Vahe.
Hey, Patrick. You've done an admirable thing by embracing the platform you have, but I'm curious if any part of that is heavy, just emotionally, in terms of whether you get concerned about alienating some people or you just can cruise through with your conscience and just go that way.
I think it's just having the right people around me. I think I have a lot of great people around me that believe in me and are going to listen to me and my beliefs no matter what they are. And so I'm just going to trust in those people. And always, if I have the respect of those people, I think I'll be good with anything else going on in the world.
We've got time for a couple more here, guys. Let's go Matt and then Steve. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Patrick, you talked about just as far as getting ready for a game like this, and without there being any preseason games to go off with Houston, you have 2 games last year. What did you really learn from that first game to the second game that helped you guys? And when you have that kind of a situation where you go back and you look at a game that you won versus a game that you lost, how much more do you look at that game that you lost on film to apply for this year?
I think you look at everything. You look at everything that they've done last season and even years past that they've played against us, and you try to formulate a game plan. But I think you see some differences between the first game and the second game we played them last year. So we just executed on the opportunities that we do have. When you play a good defense like this, there are going to be very few opportunities. So when you do have them, you have to make sure you execute. And I think that's what you saw in the playoffs is guys started stepping up, making big plays in the right when their opportunity came. And so I'm just excited for the opportunity to go out there again, play against a great defense, and try to find a way to win.
Let's go to Steve Walls to close out. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Patrick, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Hey, with everything that's happened in the offseason and what it took for not only your team, but all the teams across the league to get to this point to be able to play games, I'm just curious, what would that first snap be like on Thursday night? I know some athletes use the technique of closing their eyes and try to simulate, game-like situations in their head, but have you been able to do that at all, or were you planning to do that?
I've always done the visualization part of it, and really so like thinking about the game before you play it and do that different type of stuff. I've done that since I was at a little age. But at the same time, I'm just going to go out there and embrace the moment. I mean, that we're having this opportunity to play, that we're getting to go out there with our brothers and play the sport that we love because you didn't know if it was going to happen. And so I'm excited for the opportunity to get out there, to be on the field, and get to play the game that I love.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening.
Well, I appreciate you guys for joining me today. It's always a bittersweet time of year. On one end, we're certainly excited about kickoff on Thursday night. And on the other end, you have to go through a weekend of making some tough roster decisions and calls with players that we certainly appreciate the hard work that they've put in. And again, there were some tough calls. Before we start, I do want to thank my staff. Said this countless times. I'm very blessed to have one of the best personnel staffs in the NFL. And although it was a little different and unique not watching pro tapes the last few weeks, we certainly got some good dialogue in yesterday in regards to how we can continue to make this roster better throughout the season. And also want to make sure I thank the coaches for the work that they've done in the offseason with the unique offseason and not having the players here physically, but just doing a great job with this rookie class and getting them up to speed and getting them ready to roll. And hopefully all these guys play a big part in opening night. And lastly, just again, Rick Burkholder and his staff. I think the results have been phenomenal, as everyone knows so far. And look, we know we have a long way to go. And all the things that we've worked so hard on in our facility and throughout the league in regards to keeping players safe and healthy certainly have proven to work. Now we just can't relax. We have to just maintain these protocols throughout the season. But Rick has just done a phenomenal job of educating us, coaching us up, and making sure our guys and our coaches and our staff are following through with all the medical requirements that we need to stay or we need to adhere to. So again, thanks to the personnel staff, the medical staff, my personnel staff, the whole crew. And with that, we'll take your questions.
Let's go to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Brett, how are you?
Good, Sam. How you doing?
Good. You guys have had some success in the draft in these last 3 years, but with Breland Speaks, can you pinpoint why the development didn't quite work out there and what went into the decision yesterday not to keep him?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was certainly a unique scenario where of all the positions in it, I certainly think we have a very good roster, talented roster. That defensive line position is probably our deepest position. With Breland, different scheme when we got here, and I thought he and our staff really thought his rookie year did some things that you can really lay a foundation on. And, we all know that he came in a little out of shape the next year, and then he had the injury. So I think when you get behind the eight ball in professional football, it's tough. And then when you get behind the eight ball on a roster with a deep defensive line, it's even tougher. We'll say this, credit to the kid. He did come in shape and worked hard to get that weight off. Again, he was just up against a very deep and talented defensive line class, and in our staff and both coaching and personnel staff, and we were always committed to doing what we feel is best for the team and playing the best players and the guys that were on our active roster. We felt that day by day and the way they graded out that they just performed better and they deserved to be on the team.
Let's go to Herbie. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Brett, good morning. You mentioned wanting to make the roster better as the season goes on. And yesterday at the deadline, the league-wide deadline, you had some intriguing names out there from Lamar Miller, Clowney, Devonta Freeman, Adrian Peterson, Sidney Jones. How much does the protocols as far as COVID testing and then even the Thursday night game affect how you approach free agency this first weekend? And Brad, I'll probably have a follow-up to that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we even talked about some of these guys that we're identifying for the practice squad, not even having them here. As you mentioned, Herbie, these guys will have to go through, I believe, 2 days of testing. And once these guys clear waivers, if they're on the street, then it's going to be 3 days. So it certainly puts us in a bind where, the guys that you want to bring in, either on the active or practice squad, there's going to be a delay in that. I would say, to answer your question, all that goes into play, certainly the delay in regards to when we can get them. I think the one good thing, and we've talked about this yesterday, was having a Thursday game will help us moving forward. So we'll be able to utilize those 2 or 3 days of COVID testing with the extended weekend. So that will be a benefit, having a Thursday practice, to be able to kind of recalibrate our roster, both active and practice squad, knowing that we can get guys in over the weekend and knock the tests out. But I would say it all comes into play, the contract, injury history, and then the COVID testing, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and Brett, here's a follow-up. Because I'm glad you touched on that, Brett, because last year you were able to bring in guys like Mike Pennell, Wisniewski, Damone Harris, even Suggs late in the season. How much do you think the COVID protocols will limit what you will be able to try to do during the season?
I don't know if it will limit to the extent of not doing things. It will just delay their ability to get on the field and help us as quickly. I think that's the big thing. I think when there's a need, unless the need or the injury or the scenario that you encounter is only a 1 week or 2 week injury. I mean, when you talk about some of the moves we made, I mean, we had, like, on the offensive line, we had guys that, like, Rankin missed the season. We had guys like, Ogba, Okafor missed the season. So you're still going to have to make those moves. Unfortunately, for us and for really all teams, there's going to be a delay in regards to how quickly those guys can get acclimated and get on the field.
Let's go to Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Brett, how you doing today?
Good, Adam. How you doing?
Hey, one question about Breeland Speaks and one on another subject. First on Speaks, he came in, as you mentioned, he played a different position. And last year he missed all year because of the injury. And then this year with the shortened camp and no preseason games, was there any thought among you or your staff that maybe you didn't give him a fair chance? And Brad, I'll have one more thing to follow up.
Well, I think that, to your question, Adam, guys certainly handle rehab situations differently and how they come back. Everyone kind of progresses at different rates. And listen, without having any medical documentation in front of me, I would say that bigger people, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, are probably a little bit slower to come back in regards to skill players, running backs, receivers, safeties, what have you. But again, you go back to the scenario in which we were in. He did come back into camp and lost weight and was healthy and was able to practice throughout the course of the preseason. And, he worked hard to put himself in that position. So when guys are ready to go, we defer to the medical expertise of our staff and we let them go out there and compete and see how everything shakes out. Again, it certainly did put him behind the eight ball in that regard. Not having a year of football is, again, certainly going to be tough. And then when you throw in the factor of having, Clark and Tano and Okafor, Taco had a good camp. Obviously, he made the roster, and Mike Dana had a really good camp. So it was just one of those scenarios for him where, having the year off, having to go through a lengthy rehab process and going out there competing against a deep defensive line was a tough ask. And he competed his tail off, and I'm sure he'll learn a lot from this experience here, and it'll help him in the future. And I'm sorry, your second question was?
Cornerback. I thought because of Bashaud Breeland's suspension, maybe you guys would have made a move for a veteran guy like you have the last couple of years, but you didn't, although I know you still could. But it certainly looks at this point like the guys you have on the roster right now will be the guys you go with, at least against Houston. So I just wondered what you saw from guys like Fenton and Hamilton and Snead during camp the last month or so that leads you to be pretty confident they'll hold up well.
Yeah, well, we were certainly encouraged by the way these guys played. And Adam, most of you guys have seen these guys kind of grow and develop. And I would say to your question that we obviously always keep open dialogue and we're always looking to improve our roster. And that was probably something on our mind early on in camp. And as camp progressed and these guys really start to make some big movements in regards to their development, we became encouraged. Now, with Bashaud Breeland being out 4 weeks, we're all aware there could be some growing pains and some lumps along the way. Think back to Charvarius Ward when he was kind of forcing the action his rookie year, and he learned a lot in that Seattle game. They kind of attacked him, but he continued to grow and develop. And then he's that Colts playoff game. He built on that, and he continues to grow and develop into one of the better corners out there. So I think we're kind of looking at it in regards to that growth and maturation process with these guys, where we've seen it already in camp with guys like Snead, Fenton in his second year. Keys was out there a little late. Hamilton we just got. But these guys have gotten better and better every week. And knowing the scheme and being in the Zoom meetings all off season and knowing what our coaches are asking them, that's going to be hard to replicate in a short amount of time. We'll always continue to look what's out there and if we can get better and how we can get better. But we feel like, we have some good young corners. And again, there'll be some learning and growth early on. But with Ward being an established corner and Snead and Keys, we feel like those guys are going to be pretty good players. And we're excited about Hamilton, what he can do in all phases of the game. So we'll continue to monitor that situation. But I think we're happy with the competition and the talent right now.
Let's go to Matt McMullen. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Brett. So we've talked a lot about the continuity on this team over the entire offseason. But some of the additions that you've made in free agency, the draft, you've had a chance to watch them in camp now. What excites you about those guys that have enhanced this roster now going into the season?
Well, anytime you get a chance to add new talent and create more competition is always exciting. And I think the guys we were able to bring in free agency, have done that. They've added depth and competition to this locker room. And Mike Remmers has had a chance to bounce around at guard and tackle. Hamilton, as we just mentioned, he's a guy that I know Dave Tobe's excited about on special teams. And he's kind of bounced around from outside to inside to some safety. So we're excited about his versatility. And, this rookie class, we're certainly excited about it. I think that there's a good chance that really all these rookies, have a chance to go out there on Thursday night and really help us from Clyde to Willie Gay, LJ, I think Mike Dana. There's been, the DeShaun Wharton we've talked about, Tommy Townsend. So it's just exciting to usher in some new talent and know that these guys are going to have lasting impacts on this organization and do some great things for us. So anytime you bring in new talent, whether they're free agents or draft picks, everyone brings their own little unique energy to the building. So it's just been fun watching these guys provide that to this locker room.
Go to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Hey, Brett, I was curious about the running back room. I know Clyde's a guy. We've talked a lot about Clyde. What have you seen in Darryl to sort of make him emerge there, and then why Darwin over DeAndre?
Well, I would say with hitting Darryl first, he's one of those guys that he's been here for such a long time, and there's a lot of trust in regards to his ability in all phases of the game, running and blocking, in particular pass pro too. He's really good in pass pro. He's taught Clyde a lot. Certainly we're all excited about Clyde. We know what he can do, and he'll continue to learn and grow. And we think certainly he has an extremely high ceiling. And Darwin was a guy that really had the upper hand and held on to it. Having been here a year, having gone through a Super Bowl run with us, being a contributor on special teams, he got some stiff competition from DeAndre, but he was able to answer the call and hold on to that position. That was a close battle, but give Darwin a lot of credit for coming in to work every day and staying focused on the task at hand. Hopefully, as the waiver wire comes out here at some point, we'd like to potentially get DeAndre back if we can and get him in the mix here because we think he's a good player. But again, a lot of the credit goes to Darwin and his ability to kind of just come in every day and not get distracted and hold on to that job.
We've got time for a few more guys. We'll go right down the line. Let's go Harold, Matt, and then Nate. Go ahead, Harold.
Hey, Brett.
Hey, Harold.
I just want to talk about the undrafted free agents you got. You mentioned Breland, but give some credit to DeShaun Wharton here. How the process of finding him, I'm sure, being a UDFA, but then how impressed were you over the course of the camp that he got progressed to the point where you feel very comfortable with him on a 53-man roster, and also the other Mizzou guy, Sir Durant, on offensive line, just the local guys and how you're confident on their abilities to 53-man roster.
Yeah, and Wharton's been a great story. Going through the process here, he certainly jumped out for us as a staff at the East-West game. He had a chance to go down there and compete, and watching the drill work and watching him in the game, we certainly thought he was intriguing. And then when you go back and watch his college tape, it was a little bit choppy, and then you kind of do some more digging and homework, and you realize he was battling through a high ankle sprain, and he wasn't quite right the whole season. And fortunately for us, after the draft was over, we were able to sign him. And really the first day that we had players in the building just going out there and watching group work, he just kind of stood out. He was really twitchy, athletic, worked his tail off. So then the next question is, all right, well, wait till we put the pads on. And he kind of carried that over and was able to make plays. And then it was like, all right, well, let's see how he does against better competition. He's doing this against the threes, so let's put him up there versus the twos and the ones. And I mean, the kid just found a way to make plays and continue to get better and just answer the bell at each step. So whether it was from not being drafted to looking good in drill work but not knowing how that was going to translate to with the pads on, to the running good and against the threes, but let's see how he does against the twos, to the ones. I mean, he just kind of answered the bell and flashed at every step of the way. And credit to Brendan Daly for his excellent coaching job and continue to teach him and get more out of him. And he'll be another guy that the next question will be, okay, can he do it in a real game now against a team that is, schematically doing things to put these guys into, unfavorable positions. So, that'll be the next challenge. But again, knowing that this kid has been here for such a long time now and he's worked hard, he's been very dedicated, pro on and off the field, and attacks every day. We're excited about him. And then, with Yasir Durant, I mean, he was a guy that, we were, again, very fortunate to get him as a free agent, and he's got some versatility in his game, can play tackle, can play guard. Still a long way to go with him in regards to, just knowing exactly the ins and outs of all the checks and different adjustments that our offensive line makes throughout the course of the game. But he's come a long way as well, and he continues to grow and develop. But like all these young guys, they're just going to have to continue to work because, we're going to put an emphasis on bringing new guys in at every phase and up the ante in regards to competition. But so far, these young guys have done a great job of working through what's been a really unique offseason and handling that adversity and responding and earning spots on a talented roster.
Let's go to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Brett, following up a bit on what Herbie asked about some of the changes with COVID-19 protocols, you're going to be able to have larger and more experienced practice squads. You're going to have the advantage of being able to bring up practice squad guy players on game day. I'm just curious about what you think about the new rules and how you might be able to use them to your advantage, especially when, having like a guy like Matt Moore on the practice squad maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fluid situation, and hopefully one that everyone is kind of working through is, an outbreak. So hopefully we don't have that situation. But I think the flexibility to bring guys up for the game and then potentially bring them down, I think it's a really good thing for teams to not pin themselves in awkward situations with players and contracts and exposing them to waiver wires. So it'll be, I think a collective effort in regards to just utilizing all of the modifications in place to our advantage, and it'll certainly be on a week-to-week basis. But, I think the flexibility of bringing guys up and then down for a certain amount of weeks is something that, we don't have to subject guys to waiver wires, and we know that, we can put people in better positions in regards to if they need an additional week off and not have to try to, squeeze extra games out of guys. So that in regards to keeping veteran players on the roster, I think is a big deal too, where we have chances and opportunities for guys to continue to grow and develop and play them when we feel like they're mentally and physically ready. So I think it also helps, I think, from a long-term growth and maturation process there too. But I think it'll all be determined by the environment, both injury-related and pandemic potentially related. And, we'll certainly work and massage those rules the best we can and put our players in as best positions as possible.
Let's go to Nate Taylor to close us out. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Brett, wanted to ask you about the receiving group. Every year it's sort of a difficult task to get that number down to where you want it. Just what was the overall decisions, and obviously the return of Marcus Kemp to the roster. And then secondly, you're known as somebody who makes deals or tries to make deals kind of around this time. Just how much did the offseason, no preseason games, and obviously the pandemic play into a factor in terms of trying to find some level of negotiation and not getting a deal done?
Well, I'll answer that first question right off the bat. It was extremely unique. I think that the last few off seasons, and I had just I was talking to Matt Nagy last night on my drive home. The first two off seasons, I would say by 2 or 3 days before the cutdown day, I think I've heard from 10 to 12 to 14 teams. As of yesterday at cutdown day, I heard from one team. And I think it's just the lack of tape. And even if you think you know a guy, not seeing him for a full calendar year, it's very tough. And, where's he at injury-wise? How's he playing? Did he regress? Did he improve? So it's hard when you haven't had these guys, and there's still that aspect of still getting to know some of your young guys because you haven't had them for the OTAs or the rookie camps. And then, again, just getting to a point where you feel confident in your roster and where you are, it's a big unknown to potentially make a deal or trade for someone that you haven't seen in over a year, or you're just basing it off of college tape. So I think the fact that I got only one call was surprising, but then when you look, as you mentioned, Nate, of the lack of trades deals, I think every team was going through that same type of scenario where the unknown is just with what we're going through, and then the testing and having to put guys into a 2 or 3 day hold was they were all big obstacles to overcome. As far as receivers, listen, it's a tough room. There was a lot of talk about potentially just keeping 5, going back and forth with some other positions. Everyone knows that Tyreek and Sammy and McCole and D-Rob are just legit players. And then Pringle, with the job he did last year, I think he kind of stood out on that 5th spot because he's a guy that continues to grow and gets better. But it always comes down to special teams. And I know you guys know that Dave talked about Marcus Kemp and the job that he did, and he was one of our better special teams performers before he got hurt. He came back. Credit to the kid. I mean, the kid worked his tail off. We signed the kid a week into the start of camp, not knowing what type of condition he was in and how he responded after all that rehab process. But he came back. He got acclimated very quickly. He showed that he did all the work on his own, and he was able to quickly get up to speed. And he's one of those guys that, we put a high priority on special teams, and we know how valuable that is. And he was a guy that certainly Dave was high on and has been high on. And we always talk about those tail end roster spots to get on this team and to fill out those depth level positions. You got to play on teams, and he's a guy that does that really well.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Links to stories about the Chiefs can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands and still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There's more than 50 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Tuesday with another episode.